Anytime during the show, type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond. Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, the Ministry of Energy under the spotlight. Is this ministry delivering to the expectations of the country? Tomorrow, the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development will be under the spotlight at the first ever sector review, which will be attended by several stakeholders, including donors. This review comes at a time when the debate on the oil sector is in high gear, while at the same time reports are emerging about intrigue at the ministry involving the Permanent Secretary Kabagambe Kalisa. The review comes at a time when debate has been reopened up about the projects for power generation, including Buja Gali, Karuma, and Nyagak. All these are hydropower projects. The latest that has come from the former Energy Minister Hilary Onek indicates that all is not well, looking at the project designs and alleged inflated costs. The public outcry about constant load shedding and overbilling by Umeme also continues to take center stage. The Ministry of Energy has been faulted for accepting a bad agreement with Umeme, which has led to poor services, allegedly. This matter is the subject of investigation by Parliament, and yesterday the Salim Saleh Probe Committee pointed out that Ugandans are actually being cheated. So tonight we put the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development to task as we try to understand if all is well in the sector that it is presiding over. Our guest tonight, Mr. Bukenya Matovu, Head of Communication at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. You're most welcome, Mr. Matovu.
Thank you, Edmond.
Tomorrow you will have the first ever sector review of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. Can you begin to tell us what it is about and what kind of thing is going on that side?
In brief, the sector review is a kind of self-audit by the Ministry of Energy to try to understand whether we are doing what we are supposed to do, how we are doing it, and how shall we continue to do it. And that also brings in focus the question of resources. Have resources been adequate? Have we generated enough internal resources to enable us to do what we are supposed to do? Or we need partnerships with friendly institutions, countries and organizations. And the review generally is going to focus on those aspects of what we are doing, how we are doing it, and the resources that we are supposed to use to drive us to the future.
Can you tell us a little bit about the format of the review? How is it going to happen?
The format is going to be a workshop environment where we are going to present ourselves to those invited, and then they are going to give us critical views about what they think we have done or we ought to do, and what we haven't done or what we haven't omitted to do, and what we should do in future.
So who will be there?
A number of people are invited and institutions. We as a ministry definitely we are hosting the review. Then we have invited development partners from a number of countries. These include Germany, Norway, the UK, the USA, and many others, including the local groups who have been invited from the districts.
Right.
The districts are quite many, and
so you've invited representatives from around the country?
Around the country. These are chief administrative officers from Amuru, Arua, Bugeju, Bonisa, Bondibujo, Busia, Gulu, Hoima, Jinja, Kabarole, Kalanga, Kasese, Chiliandongo, Masaka, Masindi, Moyo, Mubende, Nebi, Ntoroko, Ntungamo, Nuoya, Soroti, Tororo, and Rukongiri.
And how long is the seminar, the review? It's 2 days.
From 10 to 11.
For 2 days, so you will be answering questions from these people about this sector?
We will be answering questions, we will be sharing with them, and we also will host a show.
What kind of show?
about what we do.
Right.
Yeah, in terms of the portfolio of the ministry, that is the energy, the electricity, the oil and gas, the minerals, all these will be shown, exhibited actually.
Right. And where is this review taking place?
At Hotel.
Right. Starting tomorrow. Is it open to the public or is it by invitation only?
By invitation, but the exhibition is open.
Is it in the People's Square, the famous People's Square, or is it within the hotel?
It's in the People's Square.
People's Square. So you'll be showing what the Ministry of Energy actually does. Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, the Ministry of Energy under the spotlight. Is the ministry delivering to the expectations of the country? You'll be able to call in later during this program to contribute to this discussion. Our guest is Mr. Bukenya Matovu, Head of Communication at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. Talk to us about how far we've come in the oil sector, in the energy sector.
Very far, Edmond, because this scenario captures the history, especially the political history. You know that in the 60s, Uganda was developing at a good, pace, to the extent that it was being compared with Malaysia and Indonesia.
Yes.
But presently, you can see where we are, and that is owed to the turbulent history that we have had, where the economy came to almost a standstill in the space between the 60s, the late 60s and the 70s, as well as early 80s. And during that time, nothing was going on except just managing the status quo, and a lot of things actually deteriorated. So what we have done so far is related to that history, and now I can tell you that ever since 1985 especially, and 86, that's when we started moving in a new direction. As a Minister of Energy, you will appreciate that at that time, if you had to host this show, you would possibly do so on a candlelight and possibly a standby generator, just because energy generated at the old oil falls dam was far short of the capacity of that facility. It had dropped so drastically that we were only able to produce about 60 megawatts out of the installed 150 at that time.
Right.
So we have had programs to address these problems of the political environment, and then we have seen ourselves at the threshold of taking off into developing and opening up wider horizons of the energy horizon to be able to address the country's energy needs.
I'd like you to take us through, Mr. Matovu, through the story of oil. We'll talk about other sectors of energy. But first of all, you mentioned the 1985 movements. You talk about the Petroleum Act, which was passed in 1985. Can you take us a little bit back when oil was first started in the 1920s, 1922 or 23, and bring us to date right now?
Now, that is the documentation that reads that oil was first seen in the 20s.
Yes.
But you will appreciate that the people who lived in that area
had seen it
much earlier.
Just like the Nile.
Now, seeing and exploring and discovering. Now we have to differentiate these aspects in terms of the years and periods that we have gone through.
Right.
In the 20s, yes, the first oil was seen and also studied by the colonial administration. Then, between that time and the period of the First and Second World War, there was no activity because all efforts were focusing on the First World War and Second World War by the colonial masters, as you know.
Yes.
And there was no activity. Now, in the 50s, when activity sort of picked up, again, this area was not seen as being attractive, because elsewhere in the world, in West Africa, Nigeria, for example, in the Arab world, discoveries were being made. So I think our position disadvantaged us in that nobody would think that there would be oil and gas in sufficient quantities in the areas that today we are talking about as being potential areas. So then from the 50s up to the 70s, talk was around, in fact, by the former President Idi Amin about that oil. And at one time he even bragged that Uganda had oil and he was going to, deliver it. But unfortunately he never did. Then came the period between 70s and the 80s, during Obote 1 or 2 especially, where promises were made that this oil would be worked upon, but then attention was elsewhere, not really focusing on the stuff itself. So what you had then was government making attempts to collect information, geoscientific information about this oil, to the extent that in 1983, that's when the first steps were taken to try to study this oil in terms of geoscience and related aspects of geography.
That's like Milton Obote's government.
That was Obote 2.
Yes.
Then in 1985, an exploration law was developed and put in place.
Which is what we're still using, I think.
Which is what we are still using, although some people have tried to badmouth it and call it an Obote law.
Right.
I mean, these have their political interests, but according to us scientifically, I mean, that was...
It's what is working.
That was the law. But then that law had new developments, especially when the new constitution was promulgated. You know very well that all laws at the time of the new constitution coming into force had to be revised to be brought in tandem with the requirements of the constitution.
Right.
So this 1985 exploration law was revised in 2000 to make it, agreeable with the terms and conditions and provisions of the new constitution. So exploration since then started. And then there was a concerted effort by government to try to study this wealth to ensure that either we'd find out whether we have it and we continue, or we don't have it and we stop altogether. Now, exploration has been going on, and we have walked the bushes and cliffs and mountains, on foot, trying to collect geoscientific information, and to the point where we had now new entrants in terms of oil companies. You will appreciate that the first oil companies that came here were just testing the ground because they couldn't believe that Uganda could have oil. And because of that, not many were interested, except a few risk takers who decided to come in what may. And at that time, we had promoted so much in the international fora this oil, but everybody dismissed Uganda as not being probable of having any oil that is worth talking about. So what happened rather was that these companies were licensed as on a first come, first basis. Because if we had failed to attract people to come, then whoever presented themselves couldn't be dismissed.
Yes.
Yeah, so we had to take the risk and seize the opportunity to license those that came forward. Now, we have been working all this time, in short, until 2006.
Yes.
When the first oil find was made.
We discovered we had enough oil to go into
now
commercial
we have
production.
to differentiate those words,
yes.
Discovered, because some people have challenged us on that.
Discovery, yes.
There was no discovery, oil was there. Yes, it was there, but the commercial
side.
Viability of this oil was discovered in 2006.
True.
At one of the wells called Mputa 1 well. Remember that in between 2002 and 2004, we had made attempts to drill and explore for oil in the southern tip of Lake Albert. But unfortunately, we were not graced with luck. Some luck was there. We found the hydrocarbons, but they were mixed with carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is not good for, drilling purposes because it could explode the wells. So we had to abandon those wells, Turako 1 and Turako 2 wells in the Semlik area, Semlik Basin or Valley, and moved northwards towards Hoima in Bunyoro Kingdom. That's where we were lucky to strike the oil. Mputa 1 well.
And then we found others, Waraga.
Then we found others.
Ngege.
Yeah, those names are striking names because people have asked us, what do those wells mean? Those wells mean that we had to pay tribute to certain aspects of life,
yes,
in the Albertine Graben. And those wells are either fish names, they are either animal names,
Right.
or even trees. Mputa is a fish, people know.
Yes.
Kingfisher is a bird, people know that. Buffalo whale is an animal, So companies propose names and names which give tribute to certain aspects of conservation, life forms, and ministry approves.
Right. And these blocks, very briefly before we move on, these blocks are really large tracts of land, thousands of kilometers, hundreds of kilometers. A block is several hundred kilometers.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
How big is Mputa, for instance?
When you talk about Mputa, you are not talking about a block.
Yes.
When you talk about Mputa, you are talking about a spot which was drilled.
Yes.
Now, for us, we talk about exploration areas.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't have the ready figures with me at my fingertips, but there are hundreds of kilometers square. These are called exploration blocks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a block could be hundreds of kilometers, like you just said.
Yes, indeed.
All right, let's look at our own capacity. Let's look at, of course, you, the ministry, represent the country in this. Does the ministry have the capacity to do this?
The ministry initially did not have capacity, but during the times we have trained. You'll appreciate that a lot of the work that these oil companies are depending upon has been scientific data has been generated by the ministry. We have continuously trained, and we are training continuously to ensure that by the time we come into production, we'll have sufficient capacity to, at least as a seed capacity, to enable us get involved in the oil and gas industry. Short of that, definitely we would be relying on external sources. But we realize that that is not good for us, so we are training people on a crash program to ensure that we have sufficient capacity and to drive the oil and gas sector forward.
Give us a very brief profile of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, very briefly.
A profile that is misunderstood by people, because when you talk about energy and minerals, what people understand is what you see just before you, a bulb.
Right.
And they see us in terms of electricity only.
Yes.
But the ministry is broader than just electricity. Electricity is one of the forms of energy.
Yes.
But the ministry looks at all forms of energy, those that are man-made and others which are heavenly made, like solar energy and like geothermal energy and other forms of energy that you can generate charcoal, rubbish, biomass, all sorts, anything that you can imagine that produces energy, or fire for that matter, is our attention. Then away from the energy aspect, then the ministry is in charge of minerals.
Right.
And these minerals are both soft and hard minerals.
Yes.
What do I mean by soft minerals? For example, oil and gas, these are soft,
even
liquid.
Clay is a mineral.
Clays, sands.
Right.
But then we talk about hard minerals. Stones are minerals. They are hard. Gold is a mineral. It's hard.
Tungsten,
diamonds, wolfram, tin, all these are hard minerals. Now, the ministry takes charge of all these extractable minerals.
Right. And how prepared is it to handle all this? Do you have the capacity, technical men? You've been, take us a little bit through the history. It's not always been there. Tell us a little bit back, a couple of years ago. What was it?
No, the ministry has always been there, except that it has been known through the times by different names. But should I say that the current ministry, as it is, came into existence in 1998 during the rationalization of government departments and ministries, where this ministry, the current ministry, used to be part of the Ministry of Natural Resources.
Yes.
Which was split into water and lands and environment on one side, and then energy and minerals on the other side.
Right.
And I mean, the human capacity, despite those changes, has been there. It's not that we created the ministry anew and we had to recruit people afresh. No. people were there in the departments then that constituted the Ministry of Natural Resources. This time they only had to be, separated into energy and minerals, and the others went on the other side, water and environment. But the ministry had capacity to build upon.
All right.
But that doesn't mean that we had full capacity, though.
Yes.
Because we have capacity as one of the challenges.
Right. Even at the moment.
Even at the moment.
Right. You need to hire people, experts.
We need to have experts. We need to train them. But then there are aspects of also losing them at the same time, because staff turnover has been very high, especially in the mineral sector. And now that the private sector is also picking up, they are encroaching on this resource of the human capacity that we have by offering them lucrative, benefits, and people have had to move. So, however, that notwithstanding, we are training more. The training goes on continuously, despite the fact that we have a high staff turnover.
All right. I would like you to talk to us at some stage this evening about the offshoots. What areas people can begin to prepare for the offshoots of the oil industry or oil sector later. I would also like you to give to us a dateline where we are at now. Maybe you begin by talking to us about that, but maybe we'll do that after a break. Let's go for a break. When we come back, talk to us about where we're at. When can we expect oil? Is it 2 months? Is it 2 years? Or is it 3 years? This is Spectrum on Radio 1. Do stay tuned.
Is your internet provider turning your world upside down? Broadband Company offers fast and reliable internet solutions. And for the first 100 subscribers this month, we offer zero connection fees. Save up to 400,000. For more information on these offers, call toll-free 0800 222 111.
Broadband Company, more than you expect.
Let the sunlight in.
Good morning, sunshine of my life. You look happy today.
I am. I came in here and I saw there was a whole pile of washing to do.
But I thought you didn't like doing the washing.
No, I love it. Anything else you need washed?
Sunlight 2-in-1 with added fabric softener smells so good you want to use it again and again.
Let the sunlight in.
Sunlight 2-in-1. Sunlight clean, sunlight fresh.
Sunlight in. Happiness is all around. Let the sunlight in.
John, Mike and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special. You've earned it.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90 is brought to you by Stanbic Bank.
Welcome back on Spectrum. Tonight, the Ministry of Energy under the spotlight. Is this ministry delivering to the expectations of you and this country? Our guest tonight, Mr. Bukenya Matovu, Head of Communication at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. You two will be able to join us in this discussion and ask questions or make general comments or contributions. Mr. Matovu, take us exactly where we are at. When do we see the first oil dropping?
Let me begin by saying that the oil and gas value chain includes through 3 segments: the upstream segment, the midstream segment, and then the downstream segment. What do these mean? The upstream segment is where we are at the moment, exploration.
Downstream.
Trying to look for the resource, the oil and gas.
Right.
We have found it. Where are we moving to?
Midstream.
We are moving into the midstream. What does the midstream contain? What does it mean? It means development and production. It means we are positioning ourselves to develop the oil wells and then later on produce the oil itself. Then the downstream is...
Downstream was exploration.
No, upstream.
Upstream was exploration.
Yes.
Yes, now going downstream, go on.
Midstream is refining. I mean, the
Development and
production, and then downstream is the market.
Right.
The refined products
right.
that come to our fuel stations. Now, today as we speak, we have moved from exploration, although exploration is still going on.
Yes.
We have now engaged second gear, that is development, readying ourselves for production. Now, what does that mean? It means that we have first of all found commercially viable quantities of oil and gas. And the figure that we put out for the public consumption and knowledge is the wealth now is estimated to be 2.5 billion barrels of oil in place. Now, these are technical terms, be very careful.
Yes.
When we talk about oil in place, we mean that the reservoirs have that much.
The ones that we can access now.
Yes, but what you can recover out of those reservoirs is not exactly the entire amount of 2.5 billion.
What's the percentage?
The percentage is about 50%. We may recover about 50% because some of it remains underground. You can't take out everything and sweep the ground and say, well, I've done it and I've gone home. No, it's you recover about 50% and the rest remains in the ground.
Yes.
That's about 1 billion. But I'll hasten to caution the public that they shouldn't look at those figures of 2.5 billion and then they multiply the 2.5 with the current world oil price, and then
110 billion.
Yes, and then they come up with how much money we should be earning, because as you know, that is crude oil.
Right.
Now, crude oil has to go through a stage of refining. Then after it is refined, that's when you see what we call the white products on the market in terms of diesel, petrol,